Hey guys, Ariel over here at Nyth. Grizzly and I just came back from a little wander through the woods in the snow, looking for animal tracks and just enjoying the weather. As you can probably see through the windows, it's dumping snow right now. And I'm still bundled up, which means I'm way too warm in the house here, but several of you guys have asked about winter clothing, so I thought I would go through what I wear. What I've got on right now is my most common winter outfit. If you're new to the channel, go check out some of my other videos. I live in the mountains of northern Wyoming, a little over 6,000 feet above sea level. It's winter for about 8 months of the year. It can snow any day of the year, including in the middle of summer, and we get frost often or very close to frost all the nights in the summer. So living in cold weather is something I'm very familiar with. Probably most of you guys do not have weather that cold or that snowy for that long. But when it's cold, this is my most common outfit. This is my favorite work jacket. It's just a, well, it would have been an inexpensive little, very lightweight fleece jacket, except I actually got it for free. I was at some kind of closeout sale at some shop with a friend, and the guy said, "Oh, hey, we've got tons of these, take this one." So I've been wearing it for years. It's very worn. There's some holes in the sleeves. There's some holes other places. It's got a few stains and tears, but this jacket I wear all the time. It's got nice zipper pockets so I can put stuff in there and not worry about falling out. And so that I wear very frequently. Now, I also wear scarves a lot. I've got quite a variety of different scarves because I like different colors, but most of them are some kind of cotton, and I've got one or two that are silk. I like them because they're so versatile. I find that just personally, if it's cold out and I don't have something around my neck, I tend to automatically, unconsciously kind of hunch my shoulders to stay warm, and then I get a neck ache. So I like scarves. I most frequently just wear them by folding them in half. These are all kind of longer ones, and looping them through themselves makes a nice warm bunch around my neck, keeps snow from falling down there, keeps wind and everything out. And they're versatile because if I get out there and it is crazy windy and something like this little hat that I knit isn't warm enough, I can take them out of there, and depending on the scarf, because I've got different widths and such, this one's one of my favorites, so I wear it the most, I can, you know, make more of a wind block by wrapping it around my head and neck like that. So I like the versatility of being able to do more than one thing with it. Or if you're going somewhere else a little nicer, you can use it like a shawl, which I've done, something like this, and so on. Anyway, I got several scarves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got 7 scarves that I rotate through, mostly just based on the color if I'm going somewhere and I want to look like I have a semi-coordinated outfit. Then I've got, well, got it all tucked in here. This is just a smart wool base layer. This one's just a little big for me. Again, it was something that I got for free when somebody else was getting rid of it, but it is just really nice thin wool. It's not very scratchy. My skin, as you probably know if you watch some of my videos about cleaning chemicals and other things, my skin reacts to everything, and some wools do irritate my skin, even ones that are not supposed to itch. Smart Wool and Icebreaker and Ibex, all those companies make some pretty good base layer stuff that really is not scratchy. And this is just a little like quarter zip or whatever that's called, black long sleeve shirt, and I do wear that a lot. Now if I'm outside working, this would be my normal top layer, and then I've just got a cotton t-shirt underneath because I do like cotton right up against my skin. So my advice here is going to be a little different than the norm, because you've probably, if you've watched anything or learned anything about layering for cold weather, everything says avoid cotton at all costs. If cotton gets wet, it is going to cool your skin very rapidly, or you could end up hypothermic. So use cotton with great care, I would say. It still, for me, is the most comfortable thing right up against my skin. So I do often have a thin cotton t-shirt on. As long as my outer layers are wool, if I do sweat a little bit, it breathes pretty well through there. If my outer layer was something like this jacket, which I'm going to show you in a minute, that's more of a plasticky, waterproof finish, it would not breathe nearly as well, and I'd be more likely to get soaked underneath from sweat and then have a problem. So that's something to be aware of, but for the majority of the time, I'm running around in a cotton shirt anyway inside. When I go outside, I just leave that on as my base layer. But you do have to be mindful for layering in general. That's the most simple way to be comfortable in lots of kinds of weather. And if you have ever been in the mountains, you probably know that weather can change very, very frequently. And so you need to be able to rapidly adjust that before you're way too cold or way too hot, and it's hard to remedy at that point. So I have this layer, then I have my little wool shirt, then my work jacket, a scarf. Those go up and down depending on how warm it is. I'll be outside shoveling snow, and I'll start with both those layers, the wool and then my outer jacket. Then I'll get too hot and I'll shed one or sometimes both of them. You do lose a lot of heat through your head. Now my hair is probably all messed up in hat hair. I do have several hats. This one's really lightweight. You might be able to see through it there. It's really thin. It's not very warm, but it keeps, snow from melting into my hair and dripping through and everything. So this one I do wear for a lot of things. If it's a little bit colder, I've got this hat, which I also made. Again, it's wool, and this is a little thicker, heavier one. This is a little bit warmer. I've got another one, because I do have duplicates of most things. Another one that's pretty similar weight to this that just stays in my van. I always want to be sure I've got warm stuff with me when I'm on the road, just in case of any kind of vehicle breakdown or whatever. So I do have another one but it's about the same weight as this. So I wear this if it's a little colder. And then, like I said, I can always back it up with wrapping a scarf around if I need to. I don't particularly love wearing hats, just a personal thing. I don't like hats on my head. I only do it when I'm cold enough to need them. And I have never personally found the need to have earmuffs or big fur hats or something like that. If you live somewhere windier, you probably are going to want more protection around here to stop wind. None of these will block a lot of wind, but where I live here, tucked into the mountains and in the trees, I simply don't get a lot of wind, so most of the time that is not an issue. Then my pants. I've got these big, not very fashionable looking wool pants. These were our Woolrich, something like Guide. I'll have to look at the tag. Guide something. They're a thick, heavyweight wool. They are not completely waterproof, but they are pretty water resistant. I wear them most of the year most of the winter while shoveling snow or doing anything active like hiking or snowshoeing or something where I'm going to be moving around and probably generating some extra body heat and possibly sweating because they will breathe. If you live in a warmer place where winters involve more rain than snow, these would have a little tendency to get soaked through eventually. But if it's just snowing, the snow just is gonna, basically bounce off of that wool. These were, I'm sorry, not Woolrich. These are LL Bean pants. But there's several companies. Woolrich makes a similar one. There's another wool company that makes stuff that I can't think of right at the moment. I think they made this shirt. Pendleton makes very nice wool stuff. So that's my pants. Again, I break the rules here, and I often wear, because that is pretty itchy wool actually, that's a really heavy weight and it's thick. I do usually wear my cotton pants as kind of my leggings underneath that. You could certainly do a wool base layer, a silk base layer, and if you're not going to be very mindful of your layering and sweating and moisture accumulation, I would recommend that. I do often ignore that, and just kind of like my base layer top, cotton is the most comfortable against my skin, and so that is usually what I wear there. Okay, got interrupted there for just a minute with another project. So on the subject of pants still, like I said, you could do wool base layers are really good. If wool is too hot or too itchy, some people like silk. I personally find it a little bit clammy. I just don't like silk for a base layer that much. I have some, I've never liked them that well. Or if you're very, very careful, you can do cotton. Now most of the time, like I said, when I'm working or doing anything where I'm active, snowshoeing, anything where I'm getting up some body heat, I do like to wear those heavy wool pants. If it is actually wet or crazy windy or... yeah, that's probably the only two reasons. So if it's really wet, like a slushy rain snow that's eventually going to soak through those or something, I do have a pair of just, regular ski pants. These are actually waterproof, water's not going to go through those at all. And so I do wear them some, but just because they have the, the more synthetic materials and they don't breathe near as well, I only use them when I really need that waterproofing. But I do have a pair of those. Like I said, I've got lots of layers of everything. Then I guess I'm down to my boots. So what I wear most of the time is these boots. I've had cold feet and poor circulation in my hands and feet for most of my life, which has always been really miserable. These boots have totally solved that. They're fur, they're made in the traditional Eskimo or native style by a native lady in Canada who does custom boots and moccasins and gloves and that kind of thing. She did an amazing job. I'll leave the link to her site down below if you're interested. I'm the kind of person who usually spends like about $5 at a secondhand store for items of clothing. These were way more than that. It's probably the most money I've ever spent on a single piece of clothing, and I no longer have cold feet. I've had them for the last 2 years. They should last the rest of my life. They've got kind of a rubber crepe on the bottom. That's the only more modern part. If I start to wear through that, I can replace it, and some of the best money I've ever spent on clothing in my lifetime. So anyway, the link to her site will be down below. Again, they're a little bit like my wool pants. I usually wear them almost all winter long. They're comfortable inside, out. Not that I usually need them inside. I'm barefoot inside most of the time. But if it gets really wet, super wet, muddy, like spring and fall, I do have a pair of these muck boots. These are totally waterproof, and until water is going over the top of them. You can wade in water, you can walk in mud. They're easy to hose off and clean. And so I do have a pair of these. This is the... the muck boots got quite a few different styles. They have some that are like rated for down to -30. These are rated for, I think, down to 0 if I remember right. They're not their absolute warmest one, but they're a good good mud boot, wet weather boot, and I do use them in the spring and fall quite a bit. While I'm on the subject of feet, I've got heavy wool socks on. With my fur boots, it's kind of optional. You can wear socks or not. Most of the time I don't. These are a big, thick pair that I wear if I need like slippers around the house. And I've got quite a few pairs of these. These are just another, again, I've got several brands, Smart Wool, Icebreaker, mixed wool ones, and there's a company that starts with a B, whose name I'm blanking on right at the moment. But anyway, I've got wool socks by all of them. I never buy cotton socks. I haven't in more than a decade at least. Wool ones and I've got lighter weight wool ones that I wear in the summer as well when I'm hiking or something. That your feet breathe better, they don't sweat nearly as much, they don't stink. I never get stinky feet, and they are way more expensive for sure when you buy them, but they last almost forever, so I think it's totally worth the money. And year-round, summer, winter, I only ever use wool socks. Working my way back up on the subject of I get cold hands and feet. If I had I actually have a pair, they're somewhere in my ski backpack and I don't have them here. I do have a pair of big leather mittens, and those are really good at keeping me warm. But as you probably know if you've ever used mittens, they're not very good at being able to do anything. You can't use your fingers for much. So I only wear them usually only if I'm skiing, or if I'm otherwise doing something where I do not really need my hands for anything. Most of the time I wear a pair of these. These are just Kinkos leather insulated work gloves. They're pretty well worn. Everyone in the area's got some. That's why I've got my name on them, so I don't mix them up. If you rub a little snow seal into these every year or so, you can make a $14 pair of gloves last forever. I've got a pair in the house, a pair in the van, a pair in a backpack. That's what I use most of the time. You got enough flexibility that you can work at most things. You can shovel snow, you can do a lot of things, and they're pretty warm and pretty durable and pretty inexpensive. For driving, occasionally I don't wear gloves a whole lot while driving. I've got a little fleece pair here that are a little softer and more flexible. And then the other one I use, these are also wool because I like to photograph outside in the winter, and you need your fingertips for running a camera. I've got a pair of these, which are pretty cool. They're a little bit big on me, but they didn't have a smaller size. And they're warm, they're wool, and they've got this cool little, there's a magnet on the mitten flap, so I can flip the flap up just like that. So often if I'm out photographing, I'll be holding the camera lens with this hand, so I'll keep the mitt flapped up, and then I'll have my fingertips out here so I can run buttons and all that kind of thing. My fingers will still get cold doing that, but it helps. So that's my hands in the winter. I guess other top layers, in addition to what I showed you earlier, I do also have a fleece hoodie. I like this one more actually in the summer than the winter because it's got a hood on it, and so I'll often take it backpacking where I know it's probably going to be below freezing at night, even in the summer, but I don't want to carry a whole ton of layers. So I don't use this one much actually in the winter, though I could. Again, it's just a 3/4 zip, and if I want, you know, a little bit more warmth up my neck and my ears, I can flip the hood up. And then I've got another, just because my other work jacket is kind of dirty and stained and torn if I'm actually going somewhere and I want to look more presentable. I've got another lightweight jacket that's very similar. This one's wool as well. And that's just another good all-around layer. And all these layers can be combined. You very rarely need really heavy layers. Pretty much only if I'm going to be sitting still in the cold do I need that. Just in case though, for when I am sitting still in the cold, I do have one of these. This is a big, thick down puffy. It's, I believe, 600 fill. This is by Rab, who's a company I've been super impressed with. I've had one of theirs for a long, long time. When I wanted to send my original one in for repairs, they actually said it was too worn and gave me a phenomenal deal on a brand new one. So this is my second one of theirs that I've had. Their warranty program's great. You will get hot in a hurry wearing this. If you don't live somewhere as cold as I do, there's probably no reason on earth you will ever need this, and I don't use this most of the time. This mainly gets used, again, if I'm like photographing something, because I may be standing relatively still for a long time and not getting much body heat or something like that. It is always too hot to wear this if I'm walking, snow shoveling, snowshoeing, anything where I'm actually moving around. But if you live somewhere super cold, and sometimes you have to sit still where it's cold, this is pretty amazing. Because what's keeping you warm is all the insulation in that down fill. Then actually have a lightweight down as well. This is more of like a down sweater. This I mainly use, kind of like that other sweatshirt, in the summer because it packs so small. And here in the mountains, it's usually below freezing in the summer and at night. And so the fact that I can, you know, pack this up super tiny and put it in, it would crush smaller, but in my backpack, so I have a nice warm layer to insulate me at night, that is good. But I could add it with a layer combo of any of my other stuff in the winter. That's basically my summer down coat where I live. And then again, if you've got actually rain coming down, a snow/rain mix, something like that, because almost none of the rest of this stuff is fully waterproof. The down stuff will shed snow if it's dry snow. Snow will brush off even, you know, a wool jacket like this if it's dry. But if you get wet snow, which thankfully we don't much here, this is like a ski jacket shell rain jacket. This is fully waterproof, so I can put that on, and normally this would be on top of a couple other layers depending how warm or cold it is out there, but this is what I use if I'm actually going to be getting wet, so that I don't get soaked the whole way through. Then just every now and then I've got a wool work shirt as well. This Pendleton one that I showed you earlier. Filson is the other brand name I was trying to think of that makes good wool stuff. Again, they are not going to be cheap, but this stuff should last you your entire life. This one I actually got for free. A friend found it at a secondhand store for a few dollars and thought it looked like my size and gave it to me, which was amazing. So I use this some in the fall, sometimes if I'm going to run around town, sometimes for wood cutting, that kind of thing. Just another nice wool shirt. This one's a little scratchier than some, so I don't prefer it right on my skin. I do like another layer under it. And then the other thing I'll wear sometimes for bottoms that I haven't gone through yet is I've got this pair. Again, I very often use this in the summer for backpacking. It's fleece lined, and the exterior is not quite fully waterproof, but it's very water resistant. It's also windproof. So wearing this either with or without another base layer, long underwear kind of layer, can be pretty warm. This is plenty warm enough, again, for doing something like snowshoeing or anything where you're actually active outside most of the time. As long as it's not really wet and you're not going to get soaked through, this will even shed, you know, some water drops. But it's also awesome for cold summer nights when you're sitting around camp in the evening. So that's my other warm layer of clothing. And a lot of this stuff is not any particular brand. I don't know. That one's Mountain Hardware. Most of these things I have bought secondhand at various stores and such, or from somewhere like Sierra Trading Post, which has seconds and closeouts and stuff on outdoor gear, and they're usually fairly deeply discounted. I'm not much for spending gobs of money on clothes, but as you can see, I live in a tiny house, and I still want to be comfortable and warm, and it's cold here a lot of the time, and I don't have any problem being plenty warm. It is the most important thing for you, because everyone's got different climates and whatever, but if you are working on staying warm, probably the most important thing to remember is have lots of layers and as much natural fibers as you can, because wools and such will not absorb sweat and make you feel clammy nearly as quick as a lot of synthetic type stuff, and you won't stink as much if you sweat either. There's a little tip for you. But lots of layers, and adjust. If you're snowshoeing and you start to get hot, or you're out snow shoveling and you start to get hot, stop and take a layer off before you're hot and, you know, sweaty the whole way through. If you're starting to get cold, stop and put a layer on before you're, like, you know, shivering uncontrollably and your teeth are chattering. It's really easy to adjust with little layers. If all I had was like that giant puffy down coat, it would be really hard to adjust. I'd either be too hot or too cold almost all the time. So that's just, that's not very useful for most things. So remember that if you're curious, that's what I do. Other people have other preferences. There's certainly other good stuff. Like I said, that's just what I've got. A lot of the stuff's been collected secondhand, used, free, out of people's junk and so on. Works really well for me. I'm comfortable. I'm not cold outside. We go, you can see she's exhausted. We go snowshoeing for a walk, for a run up the road, something like that every day in between getting wood and carrying water and all the other stuff that goes on around here, and snow shoveling when it snows. And I do not have any problem staying comfortably warm, often too warm most of the time. So, hope that's helpful if that's something you were wondering about. Thanks for watching, folks. If you're interested in more info on my off-grid tiny house life, check out some of my other videos here. And if you like what you're seeing, click the little picture of my house to subscribe, and then hit the little bell so YouTube actually notifies you every time there's a new video available. See y'all next time.